Warning: this video will reference Jace's story many times. If you really want to get the full experience, go and watch that story first. I know it is 20 minutes, but trust me, it will be worth it. Hello everyone and welcome! Last time we talked about the famous inventor and the hero of Piltover, Jace. But that whole story was told from his view. So let's have a look at what really happened. Viktor was born in Zone, on the borders of the Entersol level. With his parents being inventors, it was very easy for them to ignite the passion for invention and building within him. He devoted every minute to his studies. He would hate to interrupt his work even to eat or sleep. Even during the usual chem spills, accidental detonations or incoming chem clouds, Viktor was ready to quickly relocate if needed. Abandoning his work even for a short time was a nightmare to Viktor. Because these accidents were quite common, Viktor had the chance to study them, and upon closer inspection he realized that almost all of them were the result of human error, not a mechanical failure. He offered his services to the local businesses, developing inventions that would make them far safer working environments. Most turned him away, but one, the Fredersen Chemforge, agreed to try it out. Viktor's inventions in automation reduced the number of accidents in the forge to 0 within a month, and soon his work spread and became common in Zone, improving production with every innovation that removed human error from a process. Eventually, at the age of 19, he was surprised to be offered a place in Zone's prestigious Academy of Thaumaturgy. But Viktor's work had attracted the eye of Professor Stanwyck of Piltover, who convinced him to leave Zone and travel to Piltover's Academy instead. There he could work in the most advanced laboratories and gain access to all resources he needed. Viktor accepted the offer, moved up to Piltover and began upgrading his inventions so they could benefit everyone. He worked with Piltover's best and brightest, including the insufferable genius called Jace. The two matched in intellect, but where Viktor was methodical, logical and thorough, Jace was flamboyant and arrogant. They worked together frequently, but they never truly became friends. They would often argue over their perceptions of intuition against logic, but a level of respect held them back as they both saw the flawed brilliance in the other. One day, Viktor's work was interrupted by a major chem spill that devastated entire districts of Zone. He immediately left Piltover and returned to Zone to help those in need. Viktor crafted a complicated series of cognitive loops and installed them onto an existing robot. This is how he created a custom-built golem, Blitzcrank, to help him with the cleanup. Blitzcrank was instrumental in saving countless lives and appeared to develop a level of sentience beyond anything Viktor imagined. Even with the spill contained, Viktor stayed in Zone and helped those afflicted by the toxins. With the golem's help, he tried to use his thaumaturgical talents to save those whose lives have been blighted by the spill. Their attempt was ultimately unsuccessful in preventing more deaths, and the two separated. Though all the death in Zone worried Viktor, these events taught him a lot about merging of human anatomy with technology. When Viktor returned to Piltover weeks later, he found out that Professor Stanwyck presented Blitzcrank to the Academy as his own. Viktor filed formal complaints with the masters of the college, but no one listened even with all the proofs that Blitzcrank was his design. He turned to Jace to verify his claims, but he refused to speak up, further widening the rift between them. In the end, the matter was decided in Professor Stanwyck's favor. Bitter but resigned, Viktor returned to his studies knowing that his ultimate goal of making people's lives better and enhancing humanity was more important than one stolen project and a bruised ego. He continued his work and found more ways to eliminate human error. Over time, this became the theme in all of his future inventions. He saw human involvement in any part of a process as a grossly inefficient aberration, a view that put him at odds with many of his fellow students and professors. They saw Viktor's work as an attempt to remove the source of human ingenuity and creativity. One day, Viktor collaborated with Jace and worked on an improvement for a diving suit. The dock workers used these suits to keep Piltover's docks clear of underwater debris and lingering chemical waste. Viktor and Jace's enhanced suit allowed the workers to go deeper, remain underwater for longer, and lift heavier weights. But many of them swore they saw phantom corpse lights in the depths, or suffered from chem-inducted hallucinations. When divers experienced these symptoms, they panicked and often killed either themselves or their fellow workers. Viktor had a solution to this problem. He created a helm that allowed an operator on the surface to bypass the wearer's fear and effectively control the diver. A heated discussion between Viktor and Jace on free will and mental enslavement erupted. It looked like they were going to fight over it, but in the end, they vowed never to work together again. Jace reported the incident to the college masters, and Viktor was censored for violating basic human dignity. Though in his eyes, his work would have saved many lives. He was expelled from the college and he retreated back to his old laboratory in Zone, disgusted by the narrow-minded perceptions of Piltovans. Alone in the depths, Viktor sank into a deep depression, enduring a traumatic period of introspection for many weeks. He wrestled with the ethical dilemma he now faced, finding that once again human emotion and weakness had stood in his way. He had been trying to help others, to enhance people beyond their natural capabilities, to avoid error and save lives. Revelation came when he realized that he too had succumbed to such emotions. Viktor knew he could not expect others to follow where he did not go first. So in secret, he operated on himself to remove parts of flesh that relied upon or were inhabited by emotion. When the surgery was done, almost no trace of the young man who traveled to Piltover remained. Majority of his anatomy was now augmented, and his personality changed too. His hope for better society was refined into an obsession with what he called glorious evolution. Viktor now saw himself as the herald of Valorant's greater future. A dream where man would sacrifice flesh in exchange for superior augments. This would free humanity from fatal errors and suffering, though Viktor knew it would take time. He got back to work with fresh inspiration. He used his augments to rebuild Zonites injured in accidents, perfected breathing mechanisms, and worked tirelessly to reduce human inefficiency by decoupling physicality from emotion. His work saved hundreds of lives, yet seeking Viktor's help could be dangerous. Sometimes there were unexpected consequences, but if you were desperate, Viktor was the man you went to. Some in Zone, hearing fragments of his philosophy and seeing the success of his work, saw him as a messianic figure. Viktor couldn't care less for them, viewing their religious cult as an aberration. It was exactly what he worked to eliminate: emotional bonds to something that couldn't be proven. After a toxic event in the sump saw hundreds of men and women in the factory wood transformed into psychotics, Viktor was forced to use a powerful sedative to calm the victims and bring them back to his labs to try and undo the damage. The toxins had begun to eat away portions of their brains, but Viktor was able to slow the degenerative process by opening up their skulls and employing machinery to slowly filter their bloodstream of poison. But the technology available to him wasn't good enough, and Viktor knew many would die unless he found a way to greatly enhance the machinery. As he fought to save those people, he detected a surge of hextech energy from Piltover, and he saw immediately that this could give him the power he needed. He followed the powerful energy surge to its source, Jace's lab. Viktor demanded Jace to hand over the source of power, a pulsing Shuriman crystal, but his former colleague refused, leaving Viktor with no option but to take it by force. He returned to Zone and hooked the crystal to his machinery. readying a steam of golem host for each afflicted person in case their body gave out under the stress of the procedure. Empowered by the new crystal, Viktor's machines went to work and, gradually, the damage from the toxins began to reverse. His work would save these people, and had Viktor retained more than a fragment of his humanity, he might have celebrated. As it was, all he allowed himself was a hint of a smile. Before the process could complete, Jace burst in and started smashing the laboratory with his energized hammer. Knowing an arrogant fool like Jace would not listen to reason, Viktor ordered his robots to kill him. The battle was ferocious and only ended when Jace shattered the crystal Viktor had taken, bringing the entire warehouse down in an avalanche of steel and stone, killing those Viktor was trying to save. And for this, Jace returned to Piltover, not as a murderer or a criminal, but as a hero. Viktor escaped the destruction of the laboratory and returned to his mission of improving humanity by ridding it of its destructive emotional impulses. In Viktor's mind, Jace's blind attack only proved his point. Viktor did send chem-augmented thugs to raid Jace's laboratory. This was, at least Viktor told himself, not for revenge, but to learn if there were any more shards of the Shuriman crystal. The raid was unsuccessful, however, and Viktor thought no more of Jace. Instead, he focused his efforts on finding a way to push humans into the next evolutionary stage. Sometimes his research is viewed as unethical in both Piltover and Zone, but it is necessary to bring about Viktor's glorious evolution. Viktor decided to make one of the houses in the Emberflint Alley his new home. It was shrouded by fog and hardly anyone ventured here. This is why he chose this place. He preferred not to be interrupted. He was just operating on himself. His third hand fired a thin ray of light that welded metal into his left arm. The smell of burning flesh no longer bothered him, nor did the sight of his left wrist splayed open. Veins and muscles fused with his augments. He did not wince. Instead, he felt a sense of achievement gazing at the seamless blend of synthetic and organic materials. The sound of children shouting outside gave Viktor a pause. Keeping his left arm immobile, Viktor adjusted a silver dial on his iridoscope. The device contained a series of mirrored lenses that angled light to allow him full view of the streets outside his laboratory. Several children were violently shoving a boy toward Viktor's iron gates. "I doubt Naf will last a minute in there," said a girl with imitation gemstone embedded above her eyes. "I bet he comes with a brass head," said a boy with a shock of red hair. "Maybe then his brain won't be dull as grey." "You better return with something we can sell, or we'll be the ones giving you a new head," said the largest one, grabbing the small boy by the neck and forcing him forward. The other children backed away, watching. The young boy trembled as he approached the towering gate, which screeched as he pushed it open. He passed the front door, encrusted with interlocking gears, and shimmered through an open window. An alarm went off as he fell to the floor. Viktor sighed and pressed a switch that quieted the ringing. The skinny boy stared at the new environment. Glass jars containing organic and metal organs floating in green fluid lined the walls. A leather gurney stained with blood upon which lay mechanized drill sat in the center of the chamber. Dozens of automatons stood motionless against every wall. To Viktor, his laboratory was a sanctuary of his most creative and vital experiments, but he could imagine it might seem frightening to the child. The boy's eyes widened in shock when he saw Viktor at his workbench, arms splayed open on the table. He ducked behind a nearby crate.
"You will not learn anything from that box, child,"
said Viktor.
"But on top of it you will find a bone chisel. Hand it to me, please."
A trembling hand reached to the top of the crate and grabbed the handle of the rusted tool. The chisel slid across the floor to Viktor, who picked it up.
"Thank you,"
said Viktor, who wiped off the instrument and continued work on his arm. Viktor heard the boy's rapid breathing.
I'm replacing the twisting flexor tendons. The broken mechanism in my wrist.
Viktor said, reaching into his arm to adjust a bolt.
Would you like to watch?
The boy peeked his head around the crate. Does it hurt? Said the boy.
No,
Said Viktor.
when one eliminates the anticipation and fear of pain, it becomes entirely bearable.
Oh,
It also helps that my arm is almost completely mechanized. See for yourself.
the boy stepped away from the crate and sat across from Viktor without a word, eyes fixed on his arm. Viktor resumed welding a new bolt drive onto the tendons beneath his skin. When he had finished, he sealed the flaps of dermis onto his arm. He drew a beam of light across the seam, cauterizing his flesh and fusing the incision. Why did you do that? The boy asked. Didn't your arm work fine as it was?
Do you know what humanity's greatest weakness is?
No, said the boy.
Humans consistently ignore the endless infinity of possibilities in favor of maintaining the status quo.
The boy gave him a blank stare.
People fear change.
Viktor said.
They settle with fine when they could have exceptional.
Viktor walked to his stovetop. He mixed a blend of dark powder and downpour cream into a saucepan, heating the liquid with his laser.
Would you like a glass of sweet milk?
Said Viktor.
A weakness of mine, but I have always enjoyed the anise flavor.
You're not going to solve my head and replace it with a metal one?
Ah, is that what they think of me now?
Viktor asked. Pretty much, said the boy. I heard one kid had theirs replaced just because they had a cough.
Did you get this information directly?
Said Viktor. No, it was my neighbor Berma's cousin. Or uncle. Or something like that.
Ah, well, in that case.
Would replacing someone's head even get rid of a cough?
Now you're asking the right questions.
Said Viktor.
No, I imagine it would not be much of an upgrade. Coughing stems from the lungs, you see. And to your earlier point, I am not going to saw your head off and replacing with a metal one. Unless, of course, you want that.
No, thanks, said the boy. Viktor poured the thick liquid into 2 mugs and passed one to the boy, who stared longingly at the hot drink.
It is not drugged,
said Viktor and took a sip from his own mug. The boy gulped down the sweet milk. Are the others still watching outside? Said the boy through stained teeth. Viktor glanced through his iridoscope. The 3 children were still waiting by the front entrance.
Indeed they are. Do you wish to give them a scare?
Viktor said. The boy's eyes lit up and he nodded. Viktor handed him a sonophone and said,
Scream as loud as you can into this.
The boy gave an exaggerated, blood-curdling shriek into the sonophone. It echoed along the Amberflint alley, and the other children jumped in terror, quickly scattering to hide. The boy looked at Viktor and grinned.
I find that fear is more often than not limiting emotion,
said Viktor.
Tell me something that scares you, for example.
The Cambarans.
The Cambarans are feared because they project an air of dominance and often the threat of violence. If no one feared them, people would stand up to them. And then, where would their power go? Away, exactly. Think of how many Cambarans exist compared to how many people live in Zone. Fear is used by powerful few to control the weak because they understand how fear works. If someone can manipulate your emotions, they can control you.
I guess that makes sense, but I'm still afraid of them, said the boy.
Of course you are. Patterns of fear are carved deep into your very flesh. Steel, however, has no such weakness.
Viktor retrieved a vial containing minuscule silver beads floating in milky fluid.
That is where I may be able to assist,
he said.
I developed an augmentation that eliminates fear altogether. I could let you try it out for a short time.
How short?
The implant will dissolve in 20 minutes.
You're sure it's not permanent?
It can be, but not this one. You might find that without fear your friends out there lose their grip. Bullies feed on fear, you see, and without it, they will starve.
The boy nursed his drink, considering the offer. After a moment, he nodded to Viktor, who inserted a thin needle into the vial and injected one of the silver beads into the skin behind his ear. The boy shuddered for a moment, then smiled.
Do you feel your weakness falling away?
Viktor asked. Oh yes, said the boy. Viktor walked him to the door and twisted a dial to unlock it before waving him out.
Remember, you can always return if you wish for a more permanent solution.
A wave of fog created a ghostly silhouette around the boy as he emerged from the laboratory. Viktor returned to his workbench to watch the experiment through his iridoscope. Amberflint Alley was empty, but as soon as the boy walked out, his companions emerged. Where's our souvenir? Asked the red-haired boy. Doesn't seem like Nav has held up his end of the deal, said the girl. Guess we have to punish him, added the large boy. We did promise him a new head today after all. Don't touch me, said Nav. He raised himself to his tallest height. The bully reached for Nav's neck, but Nav turned and punched him square in the face. Blood streamed from the bully's nose. Grab him, the bully screamed. But his companions were no longer interested in grabbing him. Nav stepped toward the bullies. They stepped back. Get away from me, he said. The bullies eyed each other, then turned to Ren. Viktor closed his iridoscope and returned to his work. He stretched the fingers on his newly repaired arm and tapped them on his desk in satisfaction. And that is the incredible story of Viktor. I have to say, this may be my new all-time favorite champion story Riot has released. If you read through all the stories and connect them to Viktor, it gains an insane amount of layers. From the origins of Hextech crystals and Jace's lying, to the way children live in Zone and the way people formed religion around Viktor, counteracting his purpose. The more you read into it, the more you realize that Viktor is definitely not a black or white character. And despite his methods, he ultimately may have all the right answers for everything. Never before has a story made me question the way humanity works. But enough of philosophy for now. If you enjoyed this video, you can always click subscribe together with the bell button for future stories. You can talk to me on Twitter, Facebook and Discord. And with that, thank you so much for watching these stories and for your great feedback. And as always, thank you come again.